Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Karlene's Anime Corner, a St. Johns County Public Library podcast. I'm glad you could join me today because I have a new coworker who's going to come on and review an anime with me. And I love having new people, and it's a new year, so Happy New Year to you all. And have you made any resolutions this year? I sure did. I resolved to watch, guess what, even more anime. I have such a huge collection at home and I've only gotten through maybe a quarter of it. So it's time to buckle down and get a lot of anime watching done. Today, I do actually have a Karlene's Crunchyroll Q review for you. I watched the first 3 episodes of Keep Your Hands Off Aizakin. This series is based on a manga by Sumito Owara, and it aired in 2020, and I did hear a bunch of good chatter about it on the internet, but I'm very contrary, and everybody was going, oh, this show is amazing, you have to watch it, so of course I didn't watch it, but I decided to this time because I found out it's directed by one of my favorite directors, Masaaki Yuasa, and it was made by his studio, Science Saru. Aizakin is all about 3 girls who decide to form a club in high school in order to make their own anime. I love the fact that 2 of the girls are very much into anime and the drawing and everything else like that, while their friend is more into the money side of things. But she's very important because she's the one sitting down looking at them and going, so all that's really nice and all, but what is your story? What is your genre? What is your plan? And she asks the important questions that keep these really creative girls actually making something that's productive. What was the most amazing thing about this series is I love the animation for it. You get to actually jump right into their drawings and see all the line sketching and the design and the details that are in these girls' imaginations, and they're making it come alive. And also they show a lot of the steps and the old equipment used for hand-drawn animation, which when I was younger, they were still like the Disney Channel and stuff would have behind the scenes with the animators. Not done quite so much these days because how fun is it to stare at somebody working on a computer? But it is really cool because they actually call out how many drawings you have to make just to make a 5-minute anime. And it was over 3,000, which is insane. So I appreciate anybody who has the patience and time for that craft and the skill because it is definitely a skill. I highly recommend Keep Your Hands Off Aizakin if you love anime, love the idea of anime, love how they make anime, and just want to experience a really well animated show with lots of excitement and get up and go. It was a lot of fun to watch, and I am definitely going to be finishing this one as part of my New Year's resolution to watch more anime. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into this month's review. I am talking with Mr. Sam from the Southeast Library about Summer Wars. Today I'm here with Sam from the Southeast Public Library, and we're going to be discussing the movie Summer Wars. Summer Wars was directed by Mamoru Hosoda, and it came out in 2009, and it is one of my absolute favorite movies. Here's the description from the back of the Blu-ray edition. Worlds collide in a tale where virtual reality meets actual reality. When Kenji Koiso is pulled from Oz, a popular social networking realm, to play fiancé to classmate Natsuki, he faces a mess of challenges. Between the boisterous and bickering characters of the Jinoichi clan and the sudden chaos in Oz, Kenji and his new companions must learn the importance of coming together to face the toughest of odds. And I will already tell you guys this is a 5-star review for me, so you know where I'm coming in. But Mr. Sam, let's go ahead, and you have not been on my podcast before, so this is very exciting.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do here at the library?
Sure. So I'm a library services specialist. So I mainly work at the circulation desk or at the reference desk. I also handle adult programming. So I, create flyers, I schedule presenters. I just work with most of the programming here. And then I also kind of help Alex, who's our youth services librarian, with her youth programs.
Yeah. And with the coming new year, you're going to be having a lot more in-person programs, I assume.
Yes. Yeah, we're ramping that back up. So we have a lot for the St. John's Reads and some other programs as well.
So is there a type of program that's your favorite? Book club, crafting?
I haven't had the chance yet to do a lot of in-person programs, but I have a feeling those will be my favorites. So I helped Alex recently with a gingerbread cookie decorating program, and that was a ton of fun. That was the first time I'd done something like that.
You know, you should do that with adults too. We all like decorating cookies and then eating them.
That's a good point. Maybe I'll do an adult version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're looking forward to your in-person programming and all the excitement that's going to happen there. I was wondering, have you watched a lot of anime in the past, or is this kind of a new experience for you?
I used to watch a lot of anime. When I was young, I would always watch Toonami, Adult Swim at night when I was supposed to be sleeping.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really was into it. I watched a lot of like the 90s and early 2000s stuff like Inuyasha.
Oh, you're one of the first ones who's brought up Inuyasha. I usually get the Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon crowd, so that's fun.
Yeah, I was Inuyasha, Big O. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, I've seen most of the first season of Big O. I love the art style on that one. Very unique.
Yeah, I love the art style. Very almost like Batman-like.
Yeah, it reminds me of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah. So I didn't realize it until now, but I must have a thing for like mecha because I also love Gundam. So those are the main ones that I watched. But recently, I haven't really watched anything. I wouldn't say I'm an anime watcher. I sort of just pick series that interest me, but it's not one of my main things.
Okay. So I'm introducing you to the world of modern anime a little bit here.
You're pulling me into the modern world.
Well, I will say I did pick one of what I think is one of the best movies from the 2000s for you. So
okay.
We'll see if you think the same thing.
Okay.
But going into that though, what did you think of this movie?
I thought it was great. I love the animation. Honestly, if you hadn't told me, I would have thought it had been made recently. It just looked so good.
It's not that old. I mean, it is a 2009, so
yeah.
But I guess 10 years can change a lot in animation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the skill of the animators and the director that they managed to merge traditional animation and the digital animation to the point where it doesn't feel offsetting when they get together.
I agree completely. When I first saw the trailer, I was a little put off because I'm not one that likes the 3D animated anime.
There are some 3D animation I'm okay with because they choose it as an artistic style.
Right.
There's some where it's like, I don't know why you did that. And we call that Attack of the Bad CGI, where it's like everything looks really good. And then you have this really CGI bear show up and you're like, I don't know why.
Yes. Or there are moments I've watched where there's a lot going on. And if you don't look at the main characters, you notice all the background characters are CGI and the main characters are hand-drawn. Mm-hmm. And it's very jarring.
It is. And as I said, sometimes that's done as an artistic choice, and I'm a little bit more okay with it then. And other times it's like, I don't know why you made this choice because it's offsetting. It doesn't enhance the traditional looking animation. It doesn't enhance the CGI animation. And there's also one company that has done a lot of Netflix stuff early on. I don't know if they're still producing a lot of anime. They're a 100% CGI, and there's just something about the way their characters move that's offsetting to me. It's like even if their series is good, I have a hard time watching it.
Yes, it feels a little unnatural.
It feels a little too video gamey.
Yes,
and I'm okay with it in a video game, not so okay with it in a movie.
Yeah, I don't think maybe 10 more years from now, the CGI will look just as good as traditional animation.
Which it might. I have seen leaps and bounds of progress on that.
Right.
So
yeah. But for now, like Summer Wars, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that it was, like you said, an artistic choice because you have this digital world that's CGI and then this real world that's hand-drawn.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's hand-drawn. Most I call it traditional style at this point because there's such. Even if it's hand-drawn, it's usually still done on a computer.
Right, yeah.
So it's kind of blurring the lines.
Yeah, traditional, that's a good word for it, yeah.
So, yeah, that traditional 2D, very anime-looking style.
Yes. Yeah, so I think they did a great job with the animation. I love the colors, especially in Oz. It was just like, the story was great, and we can get into that, but I could just watch it with the audio off and still have a good time.
Oz is definitely a feast for the eyes with all the colors and the things going on and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just great. I was a fan. I would say 5 stars.
5 stars?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to admit, I think I watch this movie about once a year. I sit down and watch it. And I hadn't watched it yet this year, so I'm glad you picked it because I was like, yay. Yeah, a little behind the scenes here. I sent Mr. Sam, I think, 6 trailers of different anime movies.
Yes.
And I was like, so which one do you want to watch? And I was so happy when he chose this one.
Just crossing your fingers, hoping that it would.
I was like, there was a last minute ad. I was like, oh, I'll throw in Summer Wars. I haven't seen it for a little bit. It's time for a rewatch. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah, I'm glad I did too. It was great.
Well, let's go ahead and head into spoiler territory. Now, during this time, if you haven't seen the movie and you want to see it before we talk about everything in detail, it's a good time to stop listening and come back later because we are going to tell you everything. And it's really easy to do with a movie. You talked a little bit about Oz and about how this reminded you of another movie. And I actually have not seen this other movie it reminds you of, which is kind of sad because I am a huge fan of this franchise, at least from when I was younger, because while everybody else was watching Pokemon, I watched this show.
Yes, and that show
Was
is Digimon. Yes, I was the same. I didn't really get into Pokemon. I sort of got into it as a younger kid, but I don't think I played anything other than the first games. I never really got further.
With Pokemon, what happened is Digimon and Pokemon pretty much aired at the same time on TV. Like they were one after the other. We used to, my brothers and I used to watch Fox Kids, and that's where a lot of this showed up. And my brothers were much younger than me. There's like a 6-year gap between me and the next one. So they were loving Pokemon, and I loved Digimon because I think I was 12 or something when this came out. I was not the age it was meant for. And I loved Digimon because it actually had a story.
Yes.
And I fell in love with the story and the characters and Pokemon. I was like, this is just getting boring for me. I have a new appreciation for Pokemon looking back on it, having played some of the games, done some of the trading cards. So I'm not as down on it as I was when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Digimon, I love that franchise.
Oh, yeah. I was obsessed with Digimon. I think for me, it definitely sparked something because compared to Pokemon, which are interesting, they're cool designs.
Yeah.
Digimon had like these weird mecha kind of evolutions, and some evolutions turned them into people. It was interesting.
Angemon.
Yes, Angemon and like Wardraymon or Omnimon, I think.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I have watched the original series like 3 times, but it has been a couple years, so some of the names are a little fuzzy.
Yeah. So I was obsessed with the Digimon movie, and now I watched.
I never got the chance to watch it. I'm highly regretting it now.
Especially if you like Summer Wars, because from what I've read, it was sort of the director's proto Summer Wars.
And funnily enough, when I first watched this movie and I dragged it over to a friend's house and I was like, you have to watch this, it's a great movie. We got done watching it and she looked at me and she's like, you do realize the director pretty much told the same story using Digimon. It's just now he got to tell it his own way. And I was like, no, I had no idea. So that's why I laughed when you brought up Digimon and the Digimon movie, because I was like, yeah, I actually had a friend who told me the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't watched it for a long time, but it's very similar. There are a few key differences, and the reason why I loved Summer Wars was some of those differences.
Right.
But it was very similar. It was very much the like digital world and physical world colliding, a battle happening in this digital world that kind of decided the fate of the real world, sort of thing.
Well, and one of the things I love about rewatching Summer Wars is so much has happened in the real world technology wise, and all I could think about this time while I was watching Summer Wars is all the ransomware attacks that have happened, because I'm like, this is literally has happened. Like we had an oil pipeline shut down because somebody digitally managed to go in and corrupt the data. So it is a little scary because we are seeing some of this in real world. It's no longer just a, oh, what if? It is a when.
Yeah.
So, and Oz, with Facebook announcing Metaverse recently, I was looking at Oz going, Facebook, this is what you want to be. And I'm concerned.
Mark Zuckerberg, surprising fan of Summer Wars, maybe?
Possibly. So, because I was like, everybody has their avatar. They do all their shopping. All the governments are on there. All the utilities are on there. I was like, yeah, I'm a little concerned because I've seen now how bad that can go wrong.
Yeah, it's surprisingly dystopian movie when you realize the implications.
Yeah.
And I think it really on that level sort of hinted at what could happen if we rely too much on these monolithic sort of technological entities.
Right, because the thing with Oz is that it's not just in Japan. They hint that it's the entire world is having these issues.
Yeah.
You only see it in the small in Ueda, Japan, where the family is located because it's directly affecting them. But they say something like there's still like worldwide accounts that are compromised and so on. So it's a huge thing. So that I as I said, I've enjoyed rewatching this movie multiple times because every year, as I said, the technology gets more and more advanced, and I'm like, we're now hit the metaverse. We're getting there.
We're building up to.
We're building up to this movie. Did Hosada have like a crystal ball where you could see what was coming?
Yeah. I don't get me wrong. Oz is cool. I would love to like have an avatar and be in that world.
Oh yeah.
But none of the other stuff. If we could avoid like the nuclear.
If we could
panic,
avoid the nuclear stuff being tied into it, our water grid, our electrical grid, our emergency things, our medical, that might be a good thing.
Let's just take the best parts and avoid the apocalyptic parts.
Let's avoid crashing the entire infrastructure.
Yes, that's our goal, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned that one of the things that he wasn't able to put into his Digimon movie was the family aspect of it. And that is, I have to admit, one of my absolute favorite parts of this film is the crazy huge, I wouldn't even call them a family. They're a clan. They got cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins. I don't know how many. I read that the director Hosada of this movie tried to make 80 unique family characters for this film. And that is insane. Yeah. But it works.
I believe it. I'm sure if I went back and I counted, I'd probably find 80 characters.
Yeah. Well, even some of them are probably just mentioned in phone calls because they were all calling in saying they couldn't come because of all the craziness caused with Oz. And so you have the core family that's already there, which is already like 4 generations and then maybe 5. I think it's only 4 generations because you have great granny, you have her kids, you have their kids, and then you have the little tiny kids running around. So I think we're at 4 generations.
Yeah.
But it's insane to have that many generations and all the cousins coming in. And I love the fact that as the show goes on, you see how this family is so tied to their community because you got the firefighters, the police officer, the medical doctor. It's just they are definitely a community service oriented family. This is their town and they're going to take care of it. And they constantly talk about the 1500s when their family fought off Tokugawa's army and all this stuff. And you're just like, they have deep roots here.
I love the history. I loved getting to know all the characters. You would think with so many family members, it would be surface level or you wouldn't really get the chance to know them, but you really do.
You really do. Like the fisherman guy.
Yes.
He's such, I really don't remember all their names, but he runs a fishing fleet. He actually is a business. He shows up and you think, oh, he's just the guy who's bringing the squid. But you find out he has ships. He has a fishing fleet. And when they're trying to fight the virus in Oz, which, by the way, is called Love Machine, which is an awesome name. And I have no idea why they chose to call him that, but it's awesome. He brings in an entire ship to run as a generator and drops it in their little pond out to cool it out front. And it's awesome.
I loved how almost every character, all of these family members kind of used their skills. You know, he brought in his ship, and I think with the ship, it was these giant chunks of ice, right?
Yeah, that they used to cool the supercomputer that another family member who runs a computer supply business had. And this computer is meant for like government. And it's huge. Yeah. And they bring it in to this traditional Japanese home that has no air conditioning. That's why they needed all the ice, because otherwise I had a chance ages ago when my dad worked for Barnett Bank to go, and they had a bring your kid to work day, which was really cool, except for the fact that I had to sit around all day when my dad typed on a computer. But not all day, just the morning, because in the afternoon they had activities for the kids. But my dad worked with servers and computers. So he took me into the computer room of the bank, and it is like 40 degrees in there. It is freezing cold because it has to be kept that cold so these computers don't fry themselves. Yeah. So that reminded me of them trying to keep the computer cool with the ice. And then when Cousin Shota removes all the ice and they open the door, this wave of heat comes out.
Yeah. I love that. One thing that I love that I kind of picked up on was, and I don't know if you would agree, but it almost felt like there wasn't one protagonist. I felt like everyone kind of had their role.
I agree on that. There wasn't one. I would say that probably the two main protagonists turned out to be like Kazuma, who is the fighting avatar, because he often took the lead in a lot of things because he was so good at video games and fighting. Mm-hmm. And to a certain extent, Natsuki, because she's so good at playing Hanafuda, which is the game they use to finally defeat Love Machine, which that is another thing that is so in some ways my family, because whenever we get together we would play Uno and Stop Up, which is a Dutch card game. Pretty much you're on a bicycle trip through the Dutch countryside and you have to try and get to your destination first by collecting all the right amount of kilometer cards. Mm-hmm. And you could do nasty things to the other person to slow them down. And my Oma and I would have Stop Up like games for hours, and it was tournament like, and that's how they're playing Hanafuda reminded me of that. It's just this card game they always pull out and play. And I love the little comment at the very end that I forget which character it was, it says, of course this family would bet everything on Hanafuda because that's how they solve everything, is they play Hanafuda.
Right. Yeah, I love how they tied that in. I kind of liked that I guess if we're skipping ahead a little bit, I kind of like that final encounter wasn't like a fist fight. You know, there was a little bit of that, but it was this like almost a game of wits against this machine.
Almost a game of gambling to a certain extent, though, because Hanafuda Koikoi does have you have to draw the right card. Mm-hmm. But she's really good at knowing when to bank, when to continue, and so on. So it's a bit of chance, but also a bit of skill.
Right.
And being a card game that defeats him, and she got this epic item at the very end and everything. And I was like, this is so video game right now. But it makes sense because they're playing in a video digital world.
Right. Yeah. I loved that moment when she got that special item delivered by the whales, John and Yoko, which we only learned the names of once.
But I was like, that's a nice little comment right there. John Lennon and Yoko Ono are the guardians of the world of Oz.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, I liked how every character had their role. I liked that it wasn't just this one hero taking control. Right. I liked that Kenji had his decoding skills.
His math skills. Yeah. I mean, seriously, at the very end, he saved their lives by doing mental math so hard his nose bled.
Yes.
And I was like, that looks like me when I'm trying to do normal algebra. Yeah. And he's decoding all of this like complicated stuff to get past the security wall to try and get in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Kenji with his math skills, Natsuki with her Hanafuda, the fisherman guy with his boat generator, the computer guy bringing in the giant computer, Cosmo with his fighting skills. You have the guy who works for the Civil Defense Force, but he won't say what he does because it's security.
Yeah, he just brings in...
And he brings in like this military satellite equipment.
And they're like, where did you get that from? And he's like, I can't tell you that.
I can't tell you. And it's just like, okay. You have Granny. She plays a role that is amazing in bringing her family together. And that was the one thing. She is my absolute favorite character. But for half of the movie, she is actually dead.
Yeah.
Because she has a weak heart, and the corruption in Oz caused her heart monitor to not work, so they weren't alerted when she had a heart attack in the night. Mm-hmm. And Granny is the great-grandmother. She's 90 years old. She was born in 1920, lived through World War II, which has a place here because Oz causes all communication to break down. This, I thought, was my favorite moment of the entire movie, to be 100% honest, is all communication is broken down. Nobody is communicating. Things are chaotic. They're all running around like crazy. And she says, this is a war, and we need to fight it like a war. And she sits down, and she pulls out her old-fashioned telephone, heavy black rotary dial phone. She opens up her address book, and she starts calling everybody, from political leaders to financial leaders to local community leaders. There's one point where she's calling and she's like, I need every medical person. And she says, well, you can use that tax shelter your son set up to finally do something good. I mean, she has got snark on her. she calls all of her family members who are out there, like the fire department members, and she's like, you can do this. This is what you need to do. Go and do it. You can do it. And she encourages everybody, just her and her telephone, and she brings order back to the town. And it's amazing. Yeah, and love she her is character. Just, if I could be half the woman when I'm that old, I would be happy. So yeah, she was great. I think she was my favorite character, honestly. I loved how you had this diverse family with all these skills, but she was the cornerstone. Like she held them all together. Well, and at the lowest moment when they thought they had completely lost and everything, they find a letter she wrote after she died, and it gives them. And she says, my biggest dream is that all of you will eat a meal together as a family. Mm-hmm. And all this chaos is going on. They're possibly about to die from having a satellite dropped on them by Love Machine, because they've Love Machine now thoroughly. So this AI is actually targeting them in the real world. And they sit down and they have dinner. They have a community meal. And I'm like, I love the family aspect of that. Yeah. That they needed that moment to sit, to think, to figure out what they're doing. And then they can actually go and deal with it. Yeah. And it's just, I love... Yeah, as I said, I think Hosada did a great job with this family. It showed how they don't always get along, but they'll always pull together at the end of the day. Yeah, and I don't think we've talked about Wabsuke? We have not talked about Wabsuke, the engineer of it all in some ways. Almost literally. Although I would say probably the biggest enemy, other than Love Machine, is the U.S. military. Yes, I was surprised that they just called it out like that. They call it out right there throughout the entire movie, is that the U.S. military... So Wabsuke develops this AI called Love Machine that's supposed to be the most, I don't know how to put it, epic level hacking AI that has ever existed. It loves to play games and to collect information, and that's what it does. And he goes to sell it to the military. And we find out the reason why is because he wants to restore his family's fortunes. And the military decides, we're going to test this hacking AI by dropping it in Oz, which is what causes all of these issues. Mm-hmm. And they never really call it out what's going to happen, but apparently there's a national now uproar over this because it got released somehow. But they don't really go into that because that's not the focus of this movie. But yeah, as you said, they call it out constantly that the U.S. military did this and the U.S. military did that. And I'm just like, ooh, tell us how you feel, Japan. I loved his character. I loved that, I believe, was he the adopted son of his family? They drop it in one line, but from what I can tell, great grandma's husband, who is dead already in this movie, he's not alive anymore, had an illegitimate son that was Wabsuke, and she went ahead and adopted him as her own. Mm-hmm. So apparently, but because he's illegitimate and because of this, he's kind of an outsider in the family. Yeah. So that's why there's a lot of rough stuff going on there. And he apparently did some things. The whole family was like, we can't believe you did that, before the whole Love Machine thing. Right. So he's been gone for 10 years, pretty much in exile. Yeah, he was sort of the black sheep, and it seemed like he was almost at the start. I have in my notes, I was wondering, because I was looking, protagonist, trying to see who the main character was. Yeah, the protagonist, the antagonist. Yeah. I thought he was the antagonist. I was like, is he going to be the bad guy? They do set him up like that quite a bit, because he shows up and you're like, there's something shady going on with him. He's constantly looking at his phone, which, if you notice, he has a very American-style phone versus the Japanese cell phone. Yes. Because Japan still loves their flip phones, which to some extent I understand, because they have a nicer keyboard for typing and everything. You can also put cell phone charms on them. I'm very sad I no longer have my flip phone that I can put my little Totoro cell phone charms on. It used to light up when the phone rang. Oh, wow. Yeah. But they set him up as being possibly the bad guy. And at the end, Granny even throws him out when she finds out what he did. She was like, how dare you? And she attacks him with a naginata. Yes. She pulls out a pole arm with a blade and literally attacks him. Yes. And the whole family is just like, ah!
I love that part. It was kind of his low point, because you could tell that even though he was the black sheep, even though no one liked him,
he still cared a great deal for her.
Yeah, they had this connection. They had that flashback where she was walking with him as a little boy hand in hand. And you just really felt that he thought he was really doing something good with this, selling it to the military and trying to get their fortune back. He thought he would be able to revive the family.
And then he finds out that was not what she wanted at all. I hate to be cliched, but it like brought dishonor on the family, what he did.
Yeah.
And so and she was like, no, this does not build the community. This hurts the community. How dare you? And the other thing that caused him to suddenly turn around, come back, like he literally crashes his car. He drives back so fast to help them defeat this, is he finds out that she died and it's because of Love Machine. Mm-hmm. He inadvertently caused her to die. And so he comes back and he's like, I'm going to help you fix this. Yeah. And he's not going to sell it to the military. He's going to get rid of it. And so the black sheep gets redeemed at the end, and the family's whole again.
Yeah.
Which I think is the most important part of this movie, is the fact that at the very end, this family is whole. It's intact. They lost their great granny, but they're still together.
Yeah. Even after her death, she brings them together. She is the ultimate glue.
They have a hot spring now. Because the dropping satellite created a hot spring. So I bet you they're going to take that old-fashioned house of theirs and create an epic hot spring inn and get their fortunes back.
There you go.
They haven't said that, but I'm like, I know that's the epilogue that should have been.
That's the next step. Just
that's the next step.
Showing them all employed at this beautiful
little hot spring.
Yeah. Yeah, they redeemed their family.
So in a way, they got their... I have no idea if that's actually what happens, but that's my headcanon right there.
Headcanon. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we're running out of time here. Was there anything you didn't like about the film, or you thought could have been different?
I thought the kind of chemistry between Kenji and Natsuke...
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that.
Yeah, because there wasn't much to talk about. It was kind of the cliche setup of, hey, pretend to be my boyfriend/fiance, and then maybe we'll actually fall in love sort of thing.
Right. Now, the one advantage is they do set up, he's had a long-held crush on her for ages.
Right.
So it's not like he didn't have feelings for her. It was more like she didn't recognize him as being somebody she could have feelings for.
Yes.
And throughout this, she somehow... I think Kenji, he talks about how he doesn't really have a lot of family connections. And I think he in some ways gets adopted by this family. And that caused Natsuki to see him in a different way, how he gets along so well with her family and everything. So I can see a little bit of why she would grow to like him more in that setting. But I did feel like it was a little bit rushed for them to have like that final kiss at the end and everything. Yeah. I was just like, I don't know. Is this really a romance, or are you just happy that you're all alive?
Yeah, like maybe the endorphins of just not being crushed by a satellite. Yeah.
Although he does have Granny's approval.
That's true.
Even after she found out the truth, and that, he's not a Tokyo University student. He's just I think he's in his final year of high school even. Yes. So she still, wants him to take care of Natsuki and be a man of the family. So that is a big bonus in his part, that she agreed that he has a good character.
Yeah, and that circles back to just the family aspect, where it was less about this little budding romance and more just overall about the family, about them coming together, kind of adopting in these people who might not have had families. Wabsuke, who was the black sheep but still had a place there, and Kenji, who didn't really have family, found a place there. And I was just pleasantly surprised that it had action, it had these set pieces, but it really just centered on the family. Yeah,
it's a family drama with some sci-fi dystopian action.
Yes, and that's my favorite kind of family drama.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed, because as I said, I have watched this film, I think 10 times now. So did you notice how the baseball game on TV follows the rises and lows of the action in the real world?
I got hints of that. That was one thing we didn't have a chance to talk about, was I just kind of liked this constantly in the background.
One of the sons of the granddaughters. I'm not sure, but apparently he's a pitcher on his high school team, and they're in their final championship. And it's like when things are going really bad against their fight against Love Machine, you see him sweating on the mound, and the announcer's talking about how things are, can he make it? Can he really do it? Is this going to be a championship or whatever? And then when they get that second breath and they're going in for the attack again, they go to the game, and it's like, oh, and he's coming back, and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when they defeat Love Machine, I think almost at the exact same time, they win their baseball championship. Yeah. So it was a fun little like side thing that you keep seeing flashes to this family member in the game. He's not connected to the whole family at all, but his mom is there cheering him on constantly and stuff. Yeah. And it's like the world is ending, but she has to go cheer at the TV for her son who's playing in this game. Yeah. And I love that little bit of side story that weaves its way through the entire thing and follows all the action.
Yeah, it just kind of ties everything together very effortlessly. It makes the world feel alive. It just was great.
Yeah. And as I said, I think that was a sign of the screenwriter's skill right there, was tying all of that in the storytelling, which Hosoda was not the screenwriter, but he came up with the idea for the story and worked with the screenwriter in making it. So I don't know how much of that was him and how much was the screenwriter. Mm-hmm. But just the weaving of all the threads into this, I thought was really well done. And the baseball game is a good example of it.
Yeah. Didn't feel chaotic. Didn't feel like there were too many characters or too much going on. No. It just worked.
Well, you told me after you watched the trailer, you're like, I chose this one because I really had no idea what was happening. And I was like, well, I hope you're not looking for a confusing story, because it's actually not that confusing once you watch it.
I had no clue what was happening. I just thought, I'll watch that. I'm sure that we'll find something to talk about. And it turns out it was just this thoughtful, like really emotional at times family drama. It was great. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it so much, and thank you so much, Mr. Sam, for coming on the podcast and talking with me. Hopefully we can get you to come again. So we're going to wrap up now with our last couple thoughts. Is there one more thing you want to say, or shall we call it quits?
I just highly recommend it. It surprised me. I've never heard of this until now. I didn't realize it had the Digimon ties, and it's just a great movie.
It is. It's a fantastic movie. And so my last comment is we actually do own this in the library system. So if you are a member of the St. Johns County Public Library System, you can check it out and watch it. I made sure Mr. Keith, our acquisitions guy, got a copy of it years ago. So, and we still have it. I double checked. I myself own 2 copies because every time they come out with a new edition, I have to buy it. So I really, really highly recommend this film. It is probably one of my favorite anime films that's ever been made. The only films I have watched more are Miyazaki ones. So that is high praise for this.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you'll be able to come on again sometime.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
It was. So, bye.
Bye.
Just to wrap up here real quick, I had some fun facts about something we didn't really get a chance to talk about in our review of Summer Wars, but I mentioned the card game Hanafuda. Hanafuda is actually the type of cards that various games are played with, such as Koi Koi, which was showcased in this movie. But Hanafuda translates pretty much to flower cards. And what it is, it's a set of 48 cards divided into 12 suits that represent the 12 months. And each month has 4 cards that has a different flower on it for each month. So hence they're called flower cards. There's no numbers or anything on them. And in general, each card has a different point value that you can use when you're playing to rack up points and score wins. So just kind of a fun little thing there. Oh, another fun fact, if you want to wow your friends with some trivia, Nintendo was founded back in either 1899 or 1902. I found 2 different dates online, and I'm not sure which is accurate. And as you might be guessing, this is long before they were making video games. They originally were a card company, and they made playing cards such as Hanafuda. And if you go looking on their website today, you can find that they still are making playing cards. Not very many, and they're themed around their different franchises, such as Mario and Splatoon. I hope you enjoyed this month's episode with Mr. Sam, and if you have any thoughts or comments you would like to make on it, just please go ahead and email me at the email address in the show notes. Goodbye.